Break It Down show. Go ahead.
Okay, do it.
Hi, this is Bryan, and you're watching, and I'm on the Break It Down show.
Look at that. We got it all figured out. This is Bryan Fuller. He's my buddy. He's been on a few times if you've watched the show in the past.
Maybe five.
Is it the fifth time?
Maybe it's the fifth time. Fifth time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like you. What can I say? Hey, so we did this thing. You run a gym called Power. Okay, first off, let me back up. I met you in the mid-'90s when we were in the Army together in Darmstadt, Germany, and we were both counterintelligence agents, a.k.a. spies. For some reason, whenever I say that, people don't believe me that we were spies. And I'm like, what am I going to tell you? It's 100% true. And if you have any doubt, we would go on these things called field problems where we would practice our spy stuff. And this is what we would do. We would walk around town in civilian clothes and have meetings. But it's all pretend. But we'd walk around in a German town and go get coffee with each other and try to determine things from one another. And we would try to be relatively stealthy. You recall doing this, Bryan?
Sure. You did it more than I did, but I do recall doing this, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to play the role. I was the mayor of Aschaffenburg, that kind of thing. and we would practice surveillance and all these things. I don't have a lot of memory of what you did on these field problems. I know you were doing a lot of ops stuff. So what do you remember from those times?
I was 90% ops stuff, driving Joe around. Really, that was my big job, drive Joe around. So I only really got out into the field a tiny bit at the end. So of all of us that were spies, I was the least spy-y. I'm not sure why that was. A funny story, though. When we first showed up, it was me, Wessel, and Weiss, right? And I think the three of us. Oh no, me and Wessel.
Weiss was there too. Yeah, Weiss too.
Was Gage there as well? Gage was there as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
No, it was me, Wessel, and Gage. We showed up at the same time, right?
Okay.
And the guy, I think it was from maybe Wiesbaden. I can't remember what all the field has his name. Maybe Hanau. I'm not 100% sure. But he was like, he looked at the three of us. He's like, I think I want Wessel because he's going to help me on the softball team. And I was like,
yeah.
So that's how I wound up in ops. And just so the viewers know, what ops is like, it's an operational cell, right? So you have all the cool things going on out in the field. And the operational cell is like, hey, you guys got enough food? Oh, okay, good. We're spies too, you know. And they're like, yeah, you're spies too. But we need some more gas. Can you get some more gas for us? And like, some equipment, you know, and that's what ops did. We managed that whole process. So
we went to a thing called range density, where all the spies we were all gonna go shoot a whole bunch of weapons, and the commander's like, we're gonna shoot all the weapons. And you and I both knew it was bullshit because we were stuck in ops.
Right.
And so we went out there, and they were grooming me to become an NCO because I'd won a bunch of boards, but not really. Let's be honest, not really.
Yeah, no, they weren't rushing anybody to be an NCO.
Right. They're just like, this is you're the first guy we yell at when something that we determine is wrong is wrong. So one of the things is we had to look out for one another and make sure we drank water, which we were all doing. Everyone was great about it. We had literally just finished a round of finishing off a quart of water and had just filled our quarts. And then Dunscombe comes up and he's like, you guys aren't drinking water. And we literally had just finished drinking water, and he was convinced we weren't doing it, and he was going to get in trouble because one of us was going to have a heat casualty. And I think nobody in the unit was more prepared for, we had so much water in us. Do you remember this?
I do remember this.
And then Phil, good old Phil Curris, he takes a whole quart and just and drinks the whole thing in front of his face to mock him. And Dunscombe's like, good, Roger, good. Like he's so dumb, he didn't even know he was being mocked.
So for the viewers, while we digress, this show's not about this at all, but while we digress, so Dunscombe was actually the NCO in charge of Pete, myself, and this guy named Phil Curris. And there's other people in there too, but there's primarily the three of us. And he was such a bad NCO. At one point, we got deployed by my warrant officer, Joe, put me, the junior soldier, in charge of him.
Yeah.
And he had to report to me all the time. Roger, you know. I can't imagine anything more humiliating in your whole military career than your junior soldiers put in charge of you. And I don't recall ever like Joe taking that back. Like there's never like, well, we're gonna go back to where it's supposed to be again.
Yeah.
He just left it that way. And like it was very, very awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to go a little bit further on ops because it is funny. So we're at this range density thing, and a lot of us have 9 mils, but we're all going to shoot them. And we have M60, we have an M60, we have a bunch of M16s, and we literally barely got to shoot, Bryan and I. Like it just was just the thing. And the M60, I got to carry, either me or Bryan got to carry it because we were big and strong guys. Everybody else is completely uncoordinated.
The broken one, right?
Yeah, and you could shoot it, and it would all blow up in your hands. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say one thing though. I got the best score out of our unit in firing the pretend AT4.
Oh, good.
So there's an AT4 that's designed to destroy tanks. Okay, it's a great big rocket thing, right? And they retrofitted it with a 9 mil inside of it. So you went pew pew, and out of the whole unit, I was the best shot. And they like, oh, okay, well, whoever gets the best score on this will fire an actual AT4.
Yeah.
So I get to actually fire a real rocket launcher. And downrange, there was a not a pretend tank, like an old Russian tank, and they're like, okay, you can shoot that tank, and I hit it, so I can say I blew up a tank. I mean, it doesn't blow up a tank. It's like butter goes right through the whole tank.
Yeah. And
you walk up later on, you're like, oh, there's a hole there and a hole on the other side. This thing's really dangerous. So yeah. So I did get to fire. I did get to fire one cool thing. I was like, was it 2 weeks or something like that? A week and a half.
Yeah, something done like that.
This misery, and I got 2 minutes to fire this one rocket. And that was the most exciting part of my whole career.
Yeah. It's funny. I got to go shoot some kind of I think a saw. I got sent off somewhere to go do that. But yeah, it was like we were at the end of the line for everything. At one point, we had done a stand to in a Schaffenberg, like me, maybe Curris, and 2 other people. They just forgot us, never relieved us. And we're sort of standing there. We can watch everybody eating chow, going up to the chow truck. And we're like, we can't leave. It's the first order they teach you is you cannot leave. And so we're standing there. And finally, Chief McDermott's like, fuck this. I'll take the ass chewing. And he went over and he's like, how come no one relieved us? And they're like, well, you guys saw we were getting chow. Like, and the Army's really particular about that. If I had walked away, they would have absolutely given me an Article 15. They would have punished me and done that. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, so for as complicated as our job was, there was a lot of that kind of stuff we had to endure. Just so much of it.
So yeah. So now we all have new careers.
Yes. Moving on.
Pete and I have both found a career where we're accountable to nobody at any time of day.
Yeah.
I got long hair. Pete's got less hair. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you run a place called Power Rowing. It's a gym in Brookline, Mass, which is outside of Boston, and it's a smash success. I mean, other than COVID slowing down your growth last year, man, it's incredible what you've built there.
I'm trying to come up with like a really original concept for a gym, and it's a little cliche. Everybody says something like that. Well, we're going to do something different. But a lot of things that we do that are different are like everybody who comes to this gym gets to meet everybody that goes to the gym. And all too frequently you go to a gym, you never meet anybody. But you meet everybody here. And I make it a point to introduce you to every single person in the gym, talk about their lives, what do you do for work, in between sets and stuff like that. So people really get to know each other. So it's a really tight community. Another thing we do differently with our gym is a huge emphasis here on charity. We raise a ton of money for charities. Just organizing events, organizing competitions, organizing challenges. And this kind of brings us to the latest point is I enticed Pete about 6 months ago to do our latest challenge, or our last challenge. We just finished it. And the last challenge was, hey, Pete, I'm going to have you row around the world with us. How do you feel about that? And Pete was like, I'm on board. So I'm really good at this. I'm really good at like getting you to do stuff. It's kind of my forte.
Yeah. So we had you on the show before the day the thing was starting. It was on the 26th of February, and that was a Friday, and we were starting that day. I didn't even own a rowing machine at this point. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. And then I figured out that I had to just buy a rowing machine. But you built this thing, and just to describe it briefly, and then I'll let you kind of blow the details out. Every day, every 24-hour day was broken into 48 half-hour shifts. And then someone was rowing every single one of those shifts every single day until we went, get this, everybody, 40 million meters, which is going around the waste of the earth. So it was an endeavor to get a bunch of people together to raise charity. But I want to stress, like, nobody stopped polling on that yanker thing for 4.5 months.
Yeah, no, it was exactly. Pete nailed it. That was 100% it. So at any given time, if you had the code, you could log in and there would be a screen and somebody would be rowing. Somebody would be rowing constantly. And then at the end of every shift, like Pete would be rowing, and at the end of his shift, about 2 or 3 minutes before the end of his shift, someone would come on and be like, "Hey, Pete, I'm taking over." And he'd be like, "Hey, Brian, I got 2 minutes left." And then, I'd hop on, and then Pete would be rowing, and then I would jump in and I would take over, and then Pete would stop. And then he'd take a photograph of his screen, so we'd have a record, and then upload his meters, so we'd go into a database. And so I know Pete rowed from 12 to 12:30 at night, and then I took over at 12:30 and rowed to 1 o'clock. So that went on and on and on for 135 days times 48 shifts. It's a lot. It's like 6,000 shifts we did.
6,000 shifts. Okay, so when we first did this thing and you were talking about what was going to happen, this was a later iteration from an earlier challenge that you have done, and it was like an amount like 10,000 miles or something like that. I don't know what it was.
It was 10 million meters. 10
million meters. Okay, so we quadrupled that, and you were worried about a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
What were the worries, and how did those plan out, and what actually ended up being the problems?
So when I first did this, we used Zoom. Okay, and Zoom is notoriously unstable over a period of time. It's not great about handing off either, too. So like Zoom doesn't. So I can't just leave Zoom open for a week, and Zoom doesn't like that at all. They had a thing where I could leave Zoom open for 24 hours. So every 24 hours, I'd have to open a new meeting in Zoom and make sure the next people knew. It doesn't seem like a lot, but over 135 days, that becomes your whole life, okay? When am I going to plan out that Zoom thing? When am I going to change over the Zoom thing? And then we were using Google Forms, and Google Forms had some issues where, like, Pete would log in his 6,000 meters for his half hour, right? And enter, and then it would show up 3 times or twice, and or show up and then not show up again, and then a day later would show up again. And so I would have to go through all the database every single day and be like, is this a real one? Is this a real one? Is this a real one? So our data was a disaster, okay? And so giving anybody a statistical analysis of what they were doing was really, really tough for me, because individually Pete could keep track of his own scores, write it down, and he'd have a perfect database. And it wouldn't match my database because mine was a disaster because the Google Forms was a mess. There was other issues too about we didn't really have a dedicated website. And so all we were using is just a form. So I had to keep sending the link to everybody. Every day I had to send a link to dozens of people for the Zoom link. Here's the Zoom link today. Here's the Zoom link today. So it was really had to keep on top of it. It was a 24-hour thing. And there was a much higher, I had to teach people how to do this in our first time. And so I was pretty nervous when I decided to do this endeavor the second time. And when I announced to do this endeavor, just so happens, as soon as I made the announcement, we made the commitment, I had a stroke. So add that all in as well. I'm in my hospital bed texting some, people this is what I want the thing to look like. And so we just kept it going, and it took several months to put this all together. So we had to create a website, which is no small thing. We had the name of the website. We had kind of an idea what we wanted to do, but it's multiple tabs, registration, information, how to record your meters, little things like a map to show where we were going around the world and stuff like that. So there was a lot of lifting there. And then we hired an outside consulting firm to say, how do we make sure there's no doubles in Google Forms? What's a good way we can record images? So then we went to Amazon. Amazon has a database for saving images, so they can save a terabyte of images. And then the final piece is we switched to Google Meetings. And Google Meetings has this, if you upgrade in Google Meetings, it's stable for 100 and 48 hours or something like that. It's like a whole week. It's actually like 10 days, I think it is, whatever it is. I can't know. Here's 168 hours, but it's a whole week. And so once a week now, I would have to change the meeting. We put a link in the website. So rather than me trying to send up the links to everybody feverishly, they just clicked on the one link in the website and the meeting popped up. So really learned a lot from the first one, applied in the second one.
There was a problem also of, do we have enough people to do this? Do we, do we have how do we get new people? How do we get the people who aren't rowing as much involved and all that kind of stuff? Talk a little bit about the challenges of just filling the gaps every day, day to day.
Hold on. Okay, I'm in a web meeting.
Okay.
I'll be done in a second. So, hey guys, little shout out right there. One of the big problems is you have 48 shifts a day, right? For 135 days. How many people does that take to fill those 48 shifts? When I first mapped this out in my head, I said, well, we're going to need at least 150, 160 people because not everybody's going to want to row every day. And, they figure once every 2 or 3 days, they come in. So I thought that would be the right number of people. Now, what happened actually is people became obsessed. So we started with 133 people, of which 18 never did a damn thing. They were like, right out of the gate, all the shifts were filled in the first week, and they're like, screw this, I'm all done. But then the 133 people started booking things farther and farther and farther out. And then gradually, the 133 minus 18, so it's like, what, 115 or something like that. And then that number actually shrunk to about 78, 80. So a lot of people did like one shift a week then, so I hardly even count those people. But what happened was the top tier of people went cuckoo bananas. Really no other way to describe it. So I really was not expecting this kind of thing. So usually there's like 1 or 2 people that like I thought would maybe row 1 million meters. There was 4 people that rowed over 2 million meters, and then another 11 people that rowed well over 1 million meters, to include Pete here, who had never sat on an organ in his life. So what happened was you wound up getting 15 people would take roughly 30 or 32 shifts a day out of 48. And then the remaining 45 to 50 people would take those remaining 13, 14 shifts. And so it would be like Pete, Barbara, Dennis, Pete, Barbara, Dennis, Sharon, Pete, Barbara, Dennis, and then like, Brian. And then or, somebody else would be like Josh, Ted, Pete, Dennis. And like it just went like that, like it just went a little crazy. And so it was a really complicated organizational problem because you didn't want to burn out the top tier people, but you wanted to keep the bottom tier people engaged to make sure they kept filling in those shifts, because those remaining 13 shifts were just as critical as the other 35 shifts that were being filled redundantly. And heaven forbid, like there was times when Barbara took a week off, or Sharon was out for a couple of days, or someone at the end sort of tailed off. We now had to fill an extra 3 shifts, and that became a big issue. So it was really the problem here was organizing people in such a way that everybody still felt engaged, even if they only did 1 shift every other day or 1 shift every 3 days. And then, because those people were just as important, realistically, because if one link of the chain breaks, the whole chain breaks. So those people were just as important as the people that were really gobbling up 3 shifts a day, sometimes 5.
Yeah. It was hard because you had to schedule 2-3 weeks in advance, and I'm like, well, if I'm going to row once, I may as well row 3 times, and
Right.
I mean, 90 minutes a day of rowing for me was a norm after a while. And then like on the weekends, I'm like, what else am I going to do? I'll just row 5 times this, today or whatever.
Yeah, I was worried about the weekends, but Pete is a perfect example here. There's a lot of people that just said, nah, I'll stay home. I'm not going to do today. I'll put on feature and just watch all of it, and row. The Creature Double feature for our younger audience was back-to-back horror shows on Saturday afternoon, every Saturday afternoon. So so it was a unique management challenge. And so, yeah, so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to get everybody involved. And it meant a lot to me to see everybody do everything they did.
Did we ever have a break in the chain?
No, we did not have a break in the chain. I have to say there was moments where there was some freak out moments, like internet went down. The Google meeting was much, much better. But there was a half dozen times where it went down and like people kept rowing. And like sometimes people rowed redundantly. Like Pete might be rowing and Barbara was supposed to take over. So Pete and Barbara are both rowing now because neither could see each other. So what really saved us was individual dedication. So I'll give you a perfect example of this. It happened once every other day without fail. Pete shows up the row. He's rowing, almost at the end of my shift. Hey, where's Bryan? Isn't Bryan supposed to be here? I don't see Bryan. Oh, now he's 5 minutes late. Well, he's 7 minutes late. And like, a lot of people worked it out so their phone had Siri. Be like, Siri, call Bryan, right? And so I get these phone calls where they're still rowing, and I'm like, oh, I'll be down in a second, right? But inevitably, a lot of people had to row through somebody else's shift. And so that complicated things because people were not really crazy about it because a lot of people that had to row through somebody else's shift generally already rowed an hour. So the people that rode an hour a day or 2 hours a day never missed their shifts. The people that rode once a week, I missed a shift, right? But the people that rode an hour a day never missed a shift. And so they would be cross. It's one thing to row a half hour and then have to row an hour. Okay, that sucks. It's not perfect, but like whatever, I can deal with that. It's another thing to row an hour and a half, and then that last person doesn't show up, and you're like, now it's a half marathon.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, now I'm a little bit pissed because I've done my part today. All you had to do is show up, and like, the only saving grace I had with this was there's probably 5 or 10 times someone didn't show up and someone covered for them that I can recall. And then later on, those people that didn't show up, someone didn't show up for them. And they were like, not a problem. I got this.
Yeah.
So
I did that. I mean, there was a time when, the scheduling thing took me a minute to get it figured out. And I was like, oh, shoot, I had to row right now. And I completely missed it. Or I was super late or whatever it was. And I got picked up. And so I'm like, okay, lesson learned. I got to get better at this. Because if you didn't take the scheduling seriously, it would absolutely bite you in the ass, So
100%.
Yeah, and also we're dealing with different time zones, and you're like, and your brain is scrambled because you just got done rowing. But the thing I really want to communicate is okay, so I get on the erg, and I'm going to row, and I have total faith that person is going to be there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even occur to me when I'm rowing that that's not going to happen. And so I don't row with a hedge. I'm like, if I can maintain a 2:08 pace for the first 10 minutes, back off for a little bit for a couple of minutes, I can maybe get to 67, maybe even 6,800 meters. And, I'm in it. And then the further in I go, I was always a negative split guy. I would get faster and faster and faster.
Yep.
And I was just crushing it. And then I wouldn't even think about it because I don't care if you're there at 29:45 of the shift. It's fine. But when they didn't get that 29:45, I was like, oh, no.
I better slow down.
I've got another half hour on this thing. And I'm drenched in sweat. I'm yanking my life out, and getting really hard workout in. And when that person didn't show up, it took a minute to compose myself to figure out, because you don't want to yell at somebody in all these things.
No.
Yeah, it took a minute to get through it.
So the scheduling was really tough. So to Pete's point,
Ryan is maybe frozen, or I am.
No, I'm not frozen. You're frozen.
All right, I'm going to cover some time here. Okay, you're back. Okay, there you are. Okay.
So
and so
Pete hit on a really important point. Yeah. So we had people in 11 time zones, if I'm not mistaken, 3 across, maybe 4 across America, because there was all the way up to Alaska. And then we had England, Ireland, Spain, Czech, Russia. We had I put people in Australia, but they didn't want to participating. So I was really bummed out about Brazil, and so I think we were in area-wise like almost a dozen time zones that we're in, and we had multiple daylight savings times.
Right.
So to Pete's point, like we didn't really come up with the genius idea of putting a Boston clock on the website until like 2 weeks into this whole thing. Someone's like, I can never tell what time it is in Boston. We just put the Boston time zone, and you just open the webpage and go, oh shit, my thing's at 9 o'clock Boston time. It's now 8:59. I need to hop on that early. Because I think it's 2 in the morning here now. So yeah, that was a complication we hadn't thought of. We learned it along the way. And then
that also was complicated by the date change too. So if I'm rowing late on the West Coast, and I'm like, am I entering this as tomorrow? Did I just row tomorrow? And again, it sounds dumb sitting here like this, but when you're done rowing and you're like, it's 9:30, I'm not thinking that it's tomorrow in Boston. I've got to reset my brain, and I'm positive I misentered this stuff on occasion. I never realized it.
Not for you, but I mean, in general, I had to fix everybody's stuff every day. So I went through an audit of all the data. Every single entry that went through, some 6,000 lines worth of entry, every single one I reviewed. And I'd do it every day. I'd be like, Pete, you haven't entered your data in yet. Pete, you haven't entered your data in yet. And at first I sent personalized emails to everybody. And then I was like, then I just cut and paste their time thing. I was like, where is it? And yeah, so then I would, yeah. Every day people would put like, and then like people were doing wacky stuff. They'd be like, I ended at 7:31. I'd be like, 7:30. You ended at 7:30. I don't care if you rode 7:31, because we built in a little cushion at the end to make sure we covered all that extra time. Yeah. So
yeah. And these are this is the minutia, but this is the stuff. This was the grist in the mill. Like, you had to get these things right to get it done. One of the things that I loved was, a lot of times when you do the handover, they're done, you're done, you're just waving at each other and back to work. Like, not even hi George, bye George, just right to it. But other times, like Shirley would write you a message, or someone would stop and want to talk to you, and
so nice.
Yeah. And you would have like these love affairs, like, for like 5 minutes, and they would have these great conversations, and then they would go do their thing, and you'd keep on rowing, Yeah.
So to Pete's point, a lot of these people that were so regular doing their shifts every day, like Pete did like the 11 o'clock to midnight kind of area, but pretty much every night. And Dosh was on the West Coast too. And so it wound up being Dosh and Pete, Pete and Dosh, Dosh and Pete and Dosh every night. And so Pete and Dosh, I don't want to speak for you guys, but seem to become kind of good friends.
Yeah.
And, I see them on Facebook now chatting and stuff like that. And like the same thing happened with like Barbara and Sharon, or like, Dennis and everybody. And like Shirley was, Shirley was our oldest rower. I think she's 84, if I recall. She's 84. She was the third highest rower, I think, something right in there. Third, I can't keep track of it. And so she rowed over 2 million meters. And she would log on. She picked up all the shifts all the time. And she would log on all day. So it was always like Shirley was always online. So no matter if she was rowing or not, Shirley would just be online just to say hi to everybody. Hey, Pete. Hey, Bryan. And she's the sweetest person ever. Just hilarious. I'd be like, is Shirley on right now? No, she's not on right now. She's just saying hi. And yeah, it just became a love affair. You're right, 100% Pete.
And then Shirley is great because her body was breaking down. She had an injury to her rib, and we were changing over shifts. And I think I was with her the last shift that she completed. She's like, I just completed 90 minutes, and you could hear she's like, like just hurting every shift. And I'm like, what are you doing? We'll cover that for you. And she finally, she took a break and took a couple of days off. But this is when I say a tough old lady, like she's farm tough. I mean, I don't know if she had a broken rib or like a torn muscle in there.
Pulled some muscles in her ribs.
We
had a couple of major injuries. Frank broke his foot. He was our leader through half of it. He broke his foot. And what he did was he rigged up a dolly and put under his foot so he could row with one foot. And then Shirley, had busted ribs, and she would just row super slow. And she took a couple of days off, and just boom, right back at it. There was somebody with had like a broken finger, we had a broken toe, and like there was quite a bit of stuff. Like people just got worn down, and kept going.
Yeah.
Kept going.
I know I had to back off because both my elbow tendons started getting kind of swollen up with itis, and so I'm like, well, look, I've hit 1 million. I want to leave room for people, but I had to back off because, it was not going in a good direction, and I stopped it before it got too bad. But even now, it's still a little swollen in there, because it is a lot of work, and it's easy to lose your form for 10 minutes at a time, and I even realize it because you kind of get erg zombied, if that makes sense.
Erg zombie is a real thing. So yeah, you have to get your form to such a place so your form doesn't break down. And when I talk form all the time, form isn't necessarily provide you with the most power. There's lots of muscle weight or heavyweight lifters out there, muscle bound guys. They can row enormous numbers, terrible form. In fact, all the records 500 and under are all owned by like bodybuilders. But then they start getting around 1,000 meters and they fall apart. And then all those skinny guys pass them up to go to 2,000 plus. But form is all about making sure your body doesn't break down. And so Pete and I are about the same age. So you got to be really cautious of that. Like make sure you keep your back nice and straight, bring those elbows out, relax your head. If you start not doing some of those things, like you start pulling with your head, you're like, well, I got a neck strain. Or Pete's case with his elbows, I'm not sure what he was doing, but like he might have been pulling too much with his arms to compensate for pushing less with his legs. So things like that happen. So when you think about form and rowing, it's all about making sure you can keep rowing well into your 80s and 90s.
Yeah. I also, because I was new to erging, I hadn't figured it all out yet. So, and this is a true confession here on the Break It Down show. I crashed and fell off of my erg and had to figure out what to do.
So I'll tell you how Pete did this, okay? So when you apply pressure on the erg, you have a thing called a slide, okay? The seat slides back and forth, okay? And you're supposed to maintain nice, flat, this looks flat on my end. It looks flat here. But nice, flat pressure in one direction like this. But sometimes you get excited and you push like that.
Yeah.
Okay? And so what happens is when you push like that, your butt doesn't stay sticking on the seat, and the seat goes, and then you come down, and you miss the seat. That's what happened to Pete. So that's something I've seen a lot of people that get excited and want to row really hard. They do really push their legs and they like this, and then the seat slides away, and they come down. There's nothing there but the I-beam, and then you're like, oh, that really stings me.
In my specific case, I was trying to get comfortable on the seat because I hadn't figured out where to put my butt. Mm-hmm. And so I was hopping up like that.
Well,
and I hopped up. And then also I didn't know how tight to put the straps. So I had them pretty tight. And so not only did I crash and hit my butt on the rail and roll over onto the ground fully off of the thing, my feet were still anchored in there because now the straps were super tight. And I'm like, how do I get up from this position? Because my feet were way up in the air, not because I'm laying on the ground. Then I had to do a whole bunch of contortions and wiggles, just sit on that rail for a second, ow, and then get back into it. And then I learned to loosen the straps to the right amount. It took some time.
There you go. I appreciate that. That's awesome. So yeah, I want to mention one thing about this row around the world we did.
Please.
I'm going to give Pete a little props here, but a lot of people reached out to me and said they lost 10, 20, some people even 30 pounds during our efforts. Pete, I want to talk. I don't want to turn the interview on you, but I want to turn it back on you because you were one of our top rowers. Did you lose a couple of pounds?
Yeah, I lost like 30 pounds. And, they always say you can't outrun a bad diet, but you can absolutely outrow a bad diet. And it wasn't that I was eating poorly, right? But so I had a system and then I had rowing. And they didn't agree because, like you said, I rode late at night. So I'd go and I'd get the furnace going and I would do 90 minutes and get off at like 10 o'clock. And I'm like, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to eat. I'm going to fast. I'm not going to eat. And I'm like, I have got to eat. I had to. Like my body needed the calories. And so, even though like I didn't follow my original eating plan, I ate good, but the weight just kept falling off because of all of the, and then also the sleeves got kind of shrunk up. My shirt.
Well, What's up with that?
Yeah, what's going on here? Yeah, yeah. And they also got longer. My shirts got longer. It was good.
Yeah.
So it was great.
And the other things are big too.
Yeah. Hey, look at that thing. Where'd that come from?
Where'd you go?
Yeah, I mean the health benefit was great. It was fantastic, and all the things that come with that, better attitude. You know, for me, like I was less depressed. Just all those things that come along with it. Just walking more upright, just being just more, healthy and fit and happy about it. All of that stuff came with the rowing thing, and it was my internal personal blessing, to do that and to be motivated to row all the time. It was great, Bryan. And I really appreciate you doing that because it really, it impacted my life in probably the most significant way that anything else has in a long time.
Well, I mean, that's half the reason why we do these things. That carries me infinitely far. Oh, just because I get Pete on the hook here. Next challenge is coming up.
Good. What is it?
Row the Mississippi.
Okay.
It starts in 1 month.
I'm in.
August 15th
to
June 15th. Asking you to start in Chicago, virtually start in Chicago, rowing down first the Chicago River, then into the Mississippi, wind up in New Orleans. So I'm giving people 5 months. This is on your own thing. Still do border rowing, so you'll find it on our border rowing website probably as of early next week. Sign up. It's a challenge. You can either row the whole thing or half the thing. You can start in St. Louis for those that need to start in St. Louis, or you start in Chicago, which is a pretty big deal. It's 2.1 million meters. And as Pete just proved to any of us that are watching, it can be done. You do it on your own, do as much as you can, whenever you can. And if you get it done in 153 days, if you get it done in 153 days, boom, you get a pretty cool little medal from me.
Nice.
You rode the Mississippi.
Dennis points out that he had COVID during the rowing thing too. I mean, because this was still a thing. It's still a thing now, but it was like we started before everybody had vaccinations, at least in America.
I didn't even have my first vaccine. I think I got my first vaccination. No, maybe I got my first one.
I got mine in April, so it wasn't for me.
I got mine through the VA very, very last week in February, the first one. The second one I got middle of March. So yeah, I was way ahead of the bunch. But yeah, no, most people weren't vaccinated, so everybody's still stuck at home, which really made this whole thing work.
Yeah. So we did this for charity ultimately, and you chose Doctors Without Borders. Talk about how much we raised, and has Doctors Without Borders said anything to you about this?
They haven't said anything to me. So this is the neat thing about Doctors Without Borders. So apparently, if you're Bill Gates and you cut them a check for $2.5 million, you get all the kudos in the world.
Yeah.
You're a little nothing like me, and they raise $9,000 now. It's something right around there for them. Using all little people, asking small donations, stuff like that. You don't get any recognition. But to be fair, I haven't really tipped it off yet and said that we're all done. You can close it down. So I'll probably ask for, I'll send out one more email probably in the bunch. Remind people that if you got your T-shirt, make sure and send me the bucks. If you didn't make the 400,000 meters, or if you made your 400,000 meters and maybe a friend of yours covered your entrance fee, then maybe you still want to send him some money. So I'm not talking about anybody in particular.
Do I owe you money? I'll pay some money.
Well, you said you were going to pay for your T-shirt. I remember that.
Okay, no, I'm fine to pay it. Yeah. I didn't realize I hadn't paid.
Pete's on the record here.
I will pay.
Did it fit?
Yeah, it fits great. Yeah, I washed it and everything. I got the medal. I took a picture. It's all good. I'll actually, I was thinking about cutting the sleeves off and just using it as like a main rowing shirt.
Badass.
Yeah.
Pretty cool model, huh?
Yeah. The one thing is when you row a lot, you have to have places to hang sweaty clothes, and nobody in their house life has a need for some fat old guy's clothes all over the house, but you go 3 shifts. I'm not wearing the same shirt 3 shifts, and so maybe I'll go through 2 shifts with 1 shirt, but you're going to have a lot of sweaty stuff around the house.
I run the wash machine every day, and it's full every day.
Hilarious.
So,
What other things did you pick up along the way from the Rovers? I mean, they're interacting with you. Actually, I will say this too. Everybody was so great about covering for everybody else. Yes, you make mistakes. We all pretty much got it. There's some people that maybe did it more than others. But whatever, who cares now? But when the Google meeting was kind of failing and you were having trouble with your like screensaver or whatever it was, and it's like I called it, hey, you're not on, and you're like, son of a bitch. And I'm like, calm down. It's all right. We got it. We're rowing. But for you, it's just like a major crisis. And it's like, hey, we're all in this together. So even we got to pick you up at times and just
true.
Calm down. We got it. We'll row. No big deal.
Stable as Google meetings it wasn't perfectly stable. And so generally like at 3:00 in the afternoon, I don't know when it was 3:00, but always 3:00, it would go down. Not every day.
Yeah.
Maybe every 4 days, maybe every 3 days, maybe every other day. I don't know when. And I remember the first time I got invited to go away to a friend's house. It was like, I don't know, May 24th or something like that, right? I was like, you know what? Everybody's all set. All the shifts are taken for the next 2 days. Reset the meeting. Should be good for 5 hours. All right. I walked down to the bus stop. Okay. And then the bus is pretty far away, so it's a half-hour walk. I walked to the bus. Or 20-minute walk. I walked to the bus, waited for the bus 20 minutes. Bus showed up because I had to take the bus to the train, right? Bus showed up, and immediately someone called me like, the Google's down. The meeting's down. I was like, oh, my God. I can't believe this. Never going to get away. And so I threw a hissy fit on the bus. They let me off the bus. I ran back. Now it's a half hour plus to get back. I got about halfway there. And my web administrator, I was on the phone with her. She's like, I'll just manage all your resets for the meeting for 5 hours. And so she sat there for 5 hours with the meeting open, click, let people in. Because it automatically enters people when my computer's open. Right. But anybody else's computer open, you have to admit them in. And so she acted as temporary leader. I got a 5 hour break that window. And so I went back to the bus stop. Thankfully, it was the same bus driver anymore. But I went back to the bus stop, hopped on the bus again, then went to the train and visited my friends I hadn't seen anymore. So, it was a nutty process. So Pete, I have another meeting right now. So Bethany is out here.
Okay.
She was planning for 2:45 to do some more. So we have a video coming up.
Nice.
So we'll kind of segue into this. We'll do this again so when you cut this thing out. So Pete, we have a video coming up of everybody's row. So all these participants that rowed, like 100, right? And they're gonna put together a little video. And I got a couple of people, Bethany and Jen, are putting it all together. And so today, Bethany's gonna put me in all sorts of compromising positions, like I'm stressed out because of the Zoom one time. Someone's calling me or I'm sleeping with my phone or something like that, to add a little flavor to the video. And so the video should be out in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Nice.
We'll do another meeting, another Google meeting. We'll get everybody there. Maybe wear your shirts and medals and stuff like that.
That's great.
We'll get together and we'll watch the video together.
Let's just like the last couple seconds here tell everybody about this next thing coming up, and let's get them signed up for the Mississippi Row. Tell everybody what they need to do.
So as of this weekend, it's not quite ready yet, but it's just about ready. So it's going to be a virtual row from Chicago to New Orleans, which is 2,135,000 meters. It sounds like an impossible amount. It's not. It's totally doable. The reason it's so long is it's only actually 940 miles, but the Mississippi apparently goes like this the whole way down. So if you track the Mississippi like this, 940 miles turns into 1,300 miles. We'll start August 15th. You'll be able to sign up at borderrowers.com. That's www.borderrowers.com. There'll be a link there to join in. You can either do the half or the full 2.1 million meters. And then you, on your own, log your meters every day, how many meters you row every other day, to try to get to this amount. And if you get to the amount at the end you set up for yourself, I'll give you a pretty darn cool award.
Nice.
And that's what that is.
Well, that's great. Everybody should go to borderrowers.com. Or if you're not sure where to go, look on Facebook. You can go to Power Rowing. You can hit Bryan Fuller up. Yep. Yeah, and you'll be able to find it. Or hit me, Pete at breakitdownshow.com. Let's let Bryan go. Bryan, I'm going to sign off on this thing here. You take care. Thank you so much. Can't wait to do the next one, and I'll send you some dollars today.
35.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you